Hello, Rabbi.
We just had a conversation there. We were waiting for Kiddush because the Rebbe came down to the SOBOLOFSKY before Kiddush. You had to wait. 10 o'clock to make Kiddush.
Hi, thank you so much.
If you had it SOBOLOFSKY.
I'm so excited. I'm so happy. Thank you. You're making me so happy. We had that first meeting.
Just a second. I came to Michigan in 82. I came to Michigan in 82. This must have happened in 85.
Sitting here? Yeah, thank you.
I was 21 years old.
Hey, good morning.
They happened way before I left.
We're going to start, even though a lot of Rebbetzins are still going to be arriving. But we will start because we have a really amazing program and we want to get it going. This is clear? It's good? Okay, let me just begin by saying this is such an exciting moment. The fact that there are so many Rebbetzins in this room that each one of you should really be having your own private dinner, because every single Rebbetzin here, if you look around the room, it's the who's who of Rebbetzins. We're not talking about a crowd of people, we're talking about Rebbetzins that have kehillas, Rebbetzins that are in touch with the rabbi on a regular basis, Rebbetzins that are in touch with the pulse of what's going on in our community. And I think the most important topic that is pervasive, that affects every single community, is the topic of Shidduchim. And that's why we decided that after a few years of not being together, we would come together again on a topic that affects everybody. And that topic is Shidduchim. So let me just say that it is a great honor. I have to just call out, I'm so grateful to each and every Rebbetzin that's here. I want to say a special thank you to Rebbetzin Cohen, who has really walked me through my entire life. It's an honor. And a special honor to Rebbetzin REISMAN, my chavrusa, every single morning at 7:30 in the morning. I am so grateful. And to each of the speakers, and as we move along, every speaker will be introduced by a very special person as well. If you open your folder for just a moment, inside your folder is the list of all the task force agencies. We will describe and explain what that is shortly. But for right now, I think we should just get the program started. So, here's the plan. This is the plan for the afternoon. We're going to have a beautiful lunch. This is great. And we're going to have our first speaker is going to be Rivki Schwartz-Zickerman. Rivki is a person who runs Camp Simcha. She has been running Camp Simcha for many years. And the reason Rivki is speaking first is because Rivki is going to set the tone and describe her experience of having gone through the world of Shidduchim for many years. And it is my greatest honor now to introduce Rivki Schwartz. Good morning, almost afternoon now. It is an honor, really an honor and a privilege to be speaking in front of the Rabbanim, the doctors that are here, and all of the Rebbetzins that represent every community throughout the tri-state area, especially closer to Brooklyn area. I'll introduce myself by saying I'm Rivki Zuckerman now, Rivki Schwartz, as I'm known so much, and even my husband will once in a while call me Rivki Schwartz, because when you're Rivki Schwartz for 42 years, it's a really long time. And Baruch Hashem, 3 years ago, at the age of 42, I got married, and HaTorah gave me a baby on Yom Kippur, and I have a little baby at home, Baruch Hashem. So when Dr. Zakheim asked me to speak,
There was a humbleness and there was a fear. I hope I represent so much of what is out there and so much of what is going on, and a lot of the journey of so many of the girls and even many of the men that are going through it. When I was 19, 20 years old, graduated, excited, it was fun. Oh my goodness, everyone was getting married. And my entire class actually got married at the age of 21, other than 4 girls. We were 21 girls in the class in Detroit, Michigan. At the age of 21, by then everyone was married, you went to HOSTESSES, you dressed up, you got excited, but of course yours was coming. And then at 24, my friend got engaged and got married, and after that, 3 of us were single. Till 39, when one girl got married, 42 when I got married, and one girl, we still doubted and hope as Hashem she should. When I was 27 years old, my parents said to me, maybe now is a good time to move to New York. And I always say that my age group, or a little bit older than me, is kind of when this crisis, the Shidduch crisis that they talk about, started. Why? Because yes, there are certain people that were older than me that are still not yet married. And you did have it, but the rove, the real burden that everyone is seeing today is really at that age. What makes me say that? When I was 21, I was old. It wasn't what 21 is today. When I was 27 and moving to New York, I was moving to New York because I was really old. When my friend got engaged at the age of 30, we thought, wow, like Mashiach has to be coming. It's unbelievable that she's getting married at 30. When I came to New York, I moved here. My mother drove with me because I had a car full of stuff. And I remember looking out the window. I was 27, and I said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, I'm 27 years old. I'm watching the leaves fall. It was November. Please don't let me see the leaves fall of the trees outside of this apartment next year. Let me be married and let me go. For 17 years of falls, of autumns, I stayed there. After 4 years of living there, my friend Russell, who moved at the same time as me, called me and said, Ricky, we've been living in New York for all of high school. I said, ouch, that hurts. After 8 years, she called me and she said, we went through high school twice. And I said, Russell, I can't. It's so painful. And there was a constant worry and pain and this awe that you're carrying. And it was really, really, really challenging. When I turned 30, I understood why everyone always says they want to stay 29. And I remember my mother saying at that point, she was on the phone and she was talking to somebody about a shidduch for me. She said, yeah, my daughter just turned 30. And I said, Mom, it's not my Hebrew birthday yet. I didn't turn 30 yet. Don't make me 30 till the day I'm 30. I don't want to turn 30. And it was a scare. Why? Because all of a sudden, the stigma changed. It was even worse than in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s, and I'm single, and the way people look at me, and the way people feel toward me, and when I walk into Shul, and when I walk on the street, and my job, and I said, please don't make me 30 till then. In my 30s, new challenges came up, new things came up, and at the same time, I will tell you, throughout my journey of life, I try to be a very, very positive person. It's challenging. There are girls that I spoke to in the last few days, in the last few weeks, asking them, ladies I should say, asking them, what would you want me to present? And every single one that I spoke to said to me, thank you. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for asking. And so many of them said, everybody's journey is different. Everyone goes through a different time. Sometimes you have the girl who's read Shidduchim constantly. And sometimes you have the girl who's sitting at home who hasn't been read a Shidduch in a year and a half, literally. And sometimes you have the girl who's constantly in a strong relationship. And that girl will then say, one of the girls that I spoke to said to me, she goes, my friend will call me all the time and say to me, I just wasted 3 months of my life. And then another girl who will say to me, oh my gosh, I just got out of this relationship that I was in and I really, really hoped for it, but it was 4.5 months down the drain. She says, I never had that. I sit at home and I wait for the phone to ring, and it doesn't ring. And it's really frightening. And she said to me, in my 30s, Ricky, I had to contemplate, and I'm sorry, I hope it's okay to discuss this in a Rebbetzin conference, to freeze eggs. And she says, I debated, and it was so not something I could do, I couldn't do. She says, I tried 4 times. And it was very, very, very challenging. And then there are girls that aren't able to do that. And then there are girls that miss that opportunity because it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't something that was accepted within our community at that time, so parents pushed them off. Even sometimes Rabbanim said to them, it's okay, and it was coming from a good place. It's coming from a place of emunah and bitachon, and working on ourselves constantly. But at the same time, that tekufa is very, very challenging. I will tell you personally, and this is something I'm sharing, obviously with Rebbetzins, the tears that I cried on the West Side Highway, the first day that I had to go in, I thought Mashiach would come. I thought Mashiach was going to come from those tears alone. I had to pull to the side because it was so hard. I couldn't see out my front window. When you're sometimes driving and the rain is pouring so hard and you pull aside in that tunnel because you can't see, I couldn't see. My tears were so strong. I called my mother and said, Ma, Mashiach is going to be coming. Just from these tears alone, it has to be. And that Menuchah and bitachon that I worked on myself, and that every single works on themselves, is really challenging at times. There are ups and downs. I have a friend when I came to New York who said to me, I can't go to Shul on Rosh Hashanah. I cannot do it. I can't daven another Rosh Hashanah. It's not happening. And I just had to listen. And I just had to understand. And for me, when I went to Shul, and I connected, and I connect, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and when the Eilah comes on Yom Kippur, and I don't want to let go, it's almost, I want to say that it's almost a different feeling for someone who's so alone. Because you feel enwrapped in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's embrace, and you don't want to let go. Don't go. Don't go. And those tears are tears that you think, this is what's piercing. This is what's going to be. And I would daven tefillos. One time, I remember Rebbetzin Wolf from Detroit said she didn't have children for 12 years. She said she knew that as Hashem, one day she's going to have children, so she embraced the time that she didn't and her tefillos that went on then. She said, I took those tefillos and I knew I'm never going to get the same tefillah again. And it put a new perspective for me on what tefillah meant. And I would take those tefillos and I would try. And one day, my friend says to me, it could be Rifki, it could be we'll get married, but it could be maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to do what he did to Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm sorry, but you cannot go into Eretz Yisrael. It's not happening. And I said, what? Like, really? And then I remembered, there's a Rashi there. The last time I told this, I said it next to it, I'm all saying hello shalom. There's a Rashi there, and he smiled at me, and it says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked, let's say 100 times, if he would have asked 101, he would have been allowed in. And every single tefillah that I could, that I had the strength, I would say, this is my 101. This is my 101. This is my 101. And those tefillahs are so hard for the girls that are single. It's frightening. You're alone, you're scared. I will tell you, one of my biggest fears then, that as much, is being in an elevator alone. What if I get stuck here? Will anyone know? I could, Khalila, be left here and no one will know. I have a friend who lives in the city, got stuck after taking a shower in her bathroom. She says, Rifki, if I didn't have my phone on me, I don't know if anyone would have found me. They had to take the hinges off her door. She bought another phone plan and she keeps till today that phone in that bathroom plugged in at all times. So she should never, Khalila, get stuck there alone. And those fears are real. Who's gonna take care of me when I'm old? I used to ask my nieces and nephews that all the time. Will you take care of me? Will you take care of me when I get older? Why? Because I watched my mother take care of her parents. I watched my father and mother take care of their parents. So who's gonna take care of me? And as my friends get older, that I still daven for daily, their fear of being alone without parents is so much. Who's going to be with them? Where are they going to go for Shabbosos? Who is gonna love them the way that a parent does within this world that we live in? And that fear sets in as you get older and as you get on with time. And this, being in this tekufa, on this journey, affects everyone in the family. I used to say, 90% of my pain is my parents' pain. 90% watching my parents in pain. And they would go to simchas, and they would make sheirachas. But I would wait, and I would wait, because I want them to have an achas. And how many of my friends have gone to their parents' levias already, saying their parents won't walk them down the aisle. My friend Rachel, who got engaged at 43, a year after me, her father passed away from COVID 2 weeks before her chasana. And they had to change the invitation. And they had to change everything that was going on. Today, Baruch Hashem, she's also a mother. But that fear that all of her friends watch and think about constantly, going into a Yom Tov, going home for a Shabbos, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? There are girls this year and last year and the year before that are friends of mine that decided they're having their own Sidduchim. They're making their own Seder, only girls. Why? It's too hard to go home. It's too difficult to watch not only their siblings' lives go on, but their nieces and nephews that they held as babies when they were born, now they're bringing home their own babies. Now they're having great nieces and nephews. They had to go through the chasana as an aunt or an uncle. They had to go through brisim and kadeshim and go through as the great aunt now and the great uncle. And that part of it is just so alone and so hard that Yom Tovim, as we light the Chanukah Licht, one of my favorite Yom Tovim, and we get excited. There's a friend of mine that told me she asked a SHAYA once if she could stop lighting. It was too hard for her. After the second night watching those lights and watching the candles, she said, I can't anymore. I can't, it's too emotional. I'm living alone. I should have children running around me. I should have my husband by my side. And for years, my sister used to say to me, because it's so not fathomable, because it's so not normal, that's how we know that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a friend of mine said to me, yes, today there are articles about this. Today there are speakers speaking about Shidduchim. But, she says, what I see lacking in so much of that, and this is her journey, where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So many people will say, she's to this, he's to that, he's not this, he's not that. And she said, every single one of those gets married in a different shape or form. The tall girl, the short boy, the heavy-set person, the thin person, the person who's a little quieter, the person who's more outgoing, they all get married, and so many of them in that same category are still left behind. So she says, what I want, my message, she says, I want to tell the world, look, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She says, I work on my emunah bitachon, but I keep hearing, if you only did this, if you only did that, maybe you should. And she said, I try, and I keep trying. The rejection and the isolation and the insecurity that comes with it is so, so difficult. And the walls that are built up after that make everyone say, oh, he's too picky, she's too... It's sometimes the wall. When I was dating my husband, we had to date for a long time. He had been married before. He had children. And he wanted to make sure, A, that I was the right one, and then once that, to bring the children into the picture slowly. I was scared every step of the way. Don't hurt me. I don't want to get hurt. I'm too scared, and yet I had to still take those steps forward. I still had to move forward as if I wasn't going to get hurt. But I still was so unsure. Friends of mine who have left their leases of their apartments because they were sure they were getting married and then didn't. Friends of mine who moved to a different city or a different state because they were going to be married to someone there and then they didn't. And then there are friends, there's no way I'm marrying this guy. It's not happening. And then all of a sudden one day walked into that singles meal, I think I'm marrying this guy. And what that does to every other girl, I don't want to take too much time. If I can leave each Rebbetzin with that feeling of embrace, take in, because I will tell you the value. I see Rebbetzin Eisen sitting here. One year, Michal Clever, formerly Zakheim, said to me, Rifki, per morning, go daven by Basikin, by Rabbi Eisen. You're just going to enjoy. There's something special there. I walked out and I felt really full. My heart was full. And I see Rabbi Eisen, and he has a line of people. And he stepped out of line. He said, Afraid of Perm, Rifki. And I said, Afraid of Perm, Rabbi Eisen. And I felt so good. And I felt like I was part of the community. It was my first time in a shul. And I asked him for a bracha that day, and he gave me a bracha. And I left feeling full. And there's so many girls and men and ladies, and everybody wants to be called something different, that just want to be accepted. That just want, all of us in life want to be understood and accepted and heard. And I think that that's what the single community at large wants to feel. Don't give up on us. Don't think that we can't commit, because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be able to do that, we will. And it's happened, and you see it. And Be'ez Hashem, with the help of that everyone is doing, and the awareness, and the pushing, and the embracing from each community, I really hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu that everybody sees the Yeshua, and we really greet Mashiach together with everybody in their full happiness. Thank you so much for hearing me, and I'm honored.
Okay, I think we set the mood, so now we're ready to do the work. So it's my honor to present Rebbetzin REISMAN. I have a vivid memory of Fegi, Rifki, and I walking through the streets of Flatbush late one Shabbos afternoon, and Rifki is pouring out her heart, and we're talking, and the pain is just too much to bear. It's too much to carry. But along with that pain, there's an amunah and there's a bitachon. And as Rifki said, we have to bring Hashem into this. And yet, we also have to know sometimes how to help people overcome obstacles. Our next speaker is someone who helps people overcome obstacles to Shidduchim, dafka by bringing Hashem into the picture. I asked to be the one to introduce Mr. SHAYA OSTROV because I have gained so much personally from his books. In explaining the yesod of Menuchas HaNefesh, how it can govern and uplift every single aspect of our life, I have found that personally transformative. As a matter of fact, in addition to reading the books, Hashgacha has it that just this year when I've been commuting to Lakewood, I found in my car a flat
OSTROV that had Mr. Ostrov's training for Rabbanim, Rebbetzins, and Mechanchim, mental health professionals, a 9-session training. And these trainings accompanied me from Lakewood to back many, many times. I gained very, very much from them on a personal level, and they resonate with me as emes la'amito, and these teachings are not flashy, they're not catchy, but they're true. And so it's my honor to introduce to you Mr. SHAYA Ostrov, author of a number of books, one of them, The Inner Circle, several of them on the Menuchah principle in life and in Shidduchim. And I hope that you will be as uplifted and transformed by the teachings, although it takes a while and it takes chazara to really get it. But I hope that today will give us a good start.
Thank you, Rebbetzin. It's an honor to be invited here. I haven't spoken much since COVID. I accepted the invitation for 3 reasons. Firstly, because Baruch Hashem, I was able to get past a serious bout of COVID, and I told her, Marshall, you help me, and I'm going to try to help you kindlech. So whenever I have an opportunity, such as this, take advantage. Secondly, I was special, of course, to Rebbetzin REISMAN because my last book, Rosh Hashiva REISMAN, wrote a foreword, a very beautiful foreword. But he admitted to me that the reason he wrote the foreword is because his wife enjoyed the book so much. And lastly, because we're dealing with a epidemic, a pandemic, whatever we call it, I don't know, of people who's living or are living their lives alone, such as so eloquently described by the speaker. And this audience, you are the first responders to an ongoing 9/11 in the lives of so many people. And when I wrote my first book on Shidduchim 20 years ago, which Baruch Hashem is being republished now, it's coming out in about a month. It's very successful. It was nowhere near as acute as it is today. It has grown and metastasized. So I wanted to address this group, accept the invitation. In no door have we ever seen so many date so many, and so many live their lives alone. It's a phenomenon that we have never witnessed before. And every situation is different. But we do see patterns. In this talk, I'm going to try to describe a number of things. First, I'd like to describe how I have come to understand what we call the Shidduchim crisis. It's a perspective. Secondly, I want to talk about Menuchah and Nefesh a little bit. Then I want to give a real live example, something that happened just last week. Happens every day. And then we'll try to sum it up with some inspiration and hope. So, there are two tufas. The first tufa is the first 3,500 years of Am Yisrael. How Shidduchim work in Am Yisrael. Work beautifully, we're all here. Nissim and the flows. The Marshal was able to get each of us born after 3,500 years of marching. through history. The second mashal, the second kufa is what's happened since we've been exposed, integrated into Western culture, particularly in America over the past 70, 80 years. And I have two mashalim that I want to share with you. One is for the first kufa and the other is for the second kufa. The first mashal is, and I discussed this with my chavrusa, who was a doctor. He said it really doesn't hold up well medically, but he gave me permission to use it. So let's say somebody, Yankel, goes to a doctor, he says, Yankel, you're in trouble, you need a kidney transplant. You need a kidney, but you have very special requirements, we need a very special donor for your kidney. And then somewhere else there's a Chaim. And Chaim has a rare blood disease, right? And he says, Chaim, we have a rare blood disease and we have to give you a bone marrow transplant, but we need a very special, very specific bone marrow transplant. And it just happens that in the same hospital, they discover that Yankel can be a bone marrow transplant for Chaim, and Chaim can give Yankel one of his kidneys. Makes him in the flows. The hospital rule is that you can only give somebody after you meet them. You meet them and you say, I want this person to carry around my organ. And Chaim and Yankel meet. Right? You can imagine there is no situation in life where each understands that they represent life to each other. They're not going to try to vet each other and say, well, did you vote for Trump or Biden? And say, I don't want to give it to you, right? There's no choice here. It's life and death. There is no life without Chaim, and there's no life without Yankel. Each, he was able to live. For the first 3,500 years, is what the Gemara says, O chavrusa o misusa. Or you have a chavrusa, you die. Either marriage or you're dead. You can't live. You can't live socially, you can't live with a family, you can't have a hot meal, you can't have children, you can't have anything. Nothing. Here and there were personalities, but that was it. So while people knew what they were looking for, there was this message, O chavrusa o misusa. I need to get married to live. And this was the underpinning of marriage for the first 3,500 years. What's happened since? I want to give you another mashal. The second mashal is, there's a king. A king is getting older and he has a daughter. We can say a son as well, but let's say he has a daughter, the princess. He says, you're the princess, you're the heir to the throne. You have to decide who is going to be your life partner, with whom you will carry on the monarchy. So I want to give you a jewel, this very beautiful jewel. And how do you know who your zivig is going to be? Who is going to share the throne with you? Whoever has a jewel which is a match for your jewel. All right? Beautiful. Okay? So now the princess has her jewel, and she has suitors. They come one after the other. And she looks at the jewel, she looks at the jewel, doesn't work, goes on for weeks, for months, for years, for decades. Right? Finally, somebody comes in, a suitor, a prince from a different land, and guess what? She looks, there's the jewel. I've been waiting for you. And he says, oh, my father gave me this jewel, and I'm also looking, but my jewel doesn't match your jewel. She finally found who she was waiting for. It doesn't match. She starts all over again. And in this door, people are looking at each other as jewels and finding it doesn't match. But we don't have that concept of life and death anymore. That's been lost. in Western society where marriage is no longer important for survival, for children, for anything else, that's not so important. In the first mashal, I want to give you, I went to see somebody a number of years ago who's Menachem. And his parents came from out of town. I said, where did your parents come from? He said, they came from Rochester. So I said, how did your parents meet? He said, my parents met, my mother's parents lived in Rochester. There were two sisters. There were no Shidduchim in Rochester. One day, a Meshulach came from the Mir Yeshiva to Rochester to raise money. And my father took him in and to feed him, gave him a Meshulach. And he said, oh, you have two daughters. I have two boys that just came off the boat from Shanghai. Right? This was like 1948, whatever it was. So, oh, that's a nice idea. So guess what? The two girls went to New York, and the two sisters married the two guys that came from Shanghai and Mir. Right? That's Ochavrusa Misusa, right? There was no other possibility but marriage, right? They met each other when they got married. Today, but today is different. Today doesn't work that way. Today people are looking at each other as jewels. I've got to make sure they got the right jewel. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem is, because every yid has a neshama, and a neshama is a jewel. The problem is that we live in Western culture. And in Western culture, we have confused the inner jewel of the neshama with the outer trappings of the jewel, which we hear all the time. I'm not attracted, right? I'm not excited. I don't have the I'm not fun, right? Or I'm anxious, I'm fearful, I need someone to quiet me down. Right? So, what's the difference? The difference is that in Western culture, the culture that we live in, we have confused looking at the jewel from the perspective of who we are internally, our own inner lives, with looking at people as from the external perspective. Does he make enough money? Is she good looking enough? Is she thin enough? Right? Am I getting the right look? Right? Am I attracted enough? Now, a number of years ago, I came across the concept of Menuchah and Nefesh in the writings of Chaim Friedlander himself, who had given a series of shiurim in the Panovich Yeshiva about him. And when I heard these shiurim, my whole life changed. And I understood that here was a person who was now presenting every Shabbos. If you look at the Shabbos Mincha, which is the height of Shabbos, we look at the bracha of Menuchah and Nefesh, and there are 8 different qualities. What are they? Ava, equal to love, Nedava, to give, Emes, Emunah, Shalom, Shalva, Pasha, Betach. That these represent the height of human development. This represents what the Rebbetzin J wanted us to achieve by the time Mincha came around on Shabbos. All of Shabbos was to achieve this Menuchah and Nefesh, and once we achieve this, we can now go into the week again. Bo Shabbos, Bo Menuchah, and I began to understand that if we're looking for an answer, of how to help people understand themselves as diamonds, not to look for the externality of the diamond, but to understand who you are as a diamond, right? Then we have to teach what Menuchah and Nefesh is. We have to enable individuals to live their lives from the perspective of Menuchah and Nefesh. Because without that, there is no love, there is no giving, there is no shalom, there is no shalom. And particularly in dating, I discovered, without Menuchah and Nefesh, You cannot know who your partner is because you do not know who you are. Now, so over the years I've been zocha to understand how to transmit the experiences of Menuchah and Nefesh to people who have come to see me, couples, individuals, and to get over some of my books. I want to give you an example so you'll have we'll go from the concept to the Messiah. So you'll have an appreciation. This is something that I want to present one thing which I taught somebody just last week. I want to describe the situation you'll understand. I got a call from a shadchan 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just finished mincha. Shadchan says, we're in real trouble. There's a 27-year-old young man who goes to a well-known yeshiva, and his l'chaim is tonight. His name doesn't Chaim. Chaim's l'chaim is tonight. But Chaim may not show up. He may not show up because he's very frightened. He doesn't know if he can show up. He's anxious and he's frightened. Is he clinically anxious? Is he he's a normal guy, more or less? And not only that, but the girl that was supposed to be his scholar is a girl who has gone through serious nisyonos of illness in her life, her family, her mother, a friend, and it's going to break her. It will break anybody, but it's going to break her in particular. And if we don't do something now, the chayim may not take place. Can you help him? I don't know. I was living 500 miles away, right? So I agreed to speak to Chaim on the phone. And this is what he shared. He said that I've been dating now for 5 years. And I finally thought I had the right girl. And I didn't think there was any problem. I went into Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, I was on cloud 9. Shabbos all day long, that was great. I woke up Sunday morning, and I had this daga in my head, this worry about finances. I never worried about it before. We don't come from a very wealthy family. Not a she, but it never bothered me. And other girls I dated, it never once bothered me. But I can't get this out of my head, and I can't stop worrying about it, and I don't know if I can get to the l'chaim, because that's how deeply it is disturbing me. Now let's understand what's going on over here. We have a young man, 27 years old, dating 5 years. He finally found the girl of his dreams. And that's how he saw her. And suddenly, with one thought, everything disappears. Everything is vaporized. He no longer has a relationship. All he has is a worry about money. And how many people try to convince him, comfort him, say, no, we'll take care of you, don't worry. He couldn't get out of his head. Now, from the perspective of Menuchah and Nefesh, we have a general category. We call this Pizer and Nefesh, right? What's Menuchah Nefesh and Pizer and Nefesh? Menuchah and Nefesh is Ava, Nedava, Sholem, Shalva, all of these things which enable a person to feel like a Sholem, right? Pizer and Nefesh is when a person feels scattered. He has no center of gravity. He has no connection to the Rabboni Shalom. He has no connection to his own neshama. So how do you enable? You can't convince Chaim, I'll take care of things financially, because he's in Pizer and Nefesh. It's not a money thing. It's a neshama thing. It's a mind thing. So I taught Chaim a a method that I have taught other people. And I want to give you a sense of how I come to use Menuchah and Nefesh. The method that I taught him is called FACT. FACT, word F-A-C-T. The facts of life. But it really stands for 4 progressive ways of thinking. How to go from Pizer and Nefesh to Menuchah and Nefesh. Like the Panama Canal. How do you go up the canals? How do you go up one level at a time? So what is fact? The first thing is Chaim has a thought. What is a thought? You should know that a thought is the highest level in the human mind. It is the closest to Ruchnis that we have. Now sometimes we have positive thoughts and sometimes we have negative thoughts. Positive thoughts, I love my color, is Menuchah and Nefesh. Shalom v'shalva, alva, ava v'dava. I'm scared about money, or I'm scared about whatever it is, Pizer and Nefesh, right? So, but something else interesting here, Menuchah and Nefesh means that every moment of life is a gift from Rebbetzin J. The human brain has 100 billion cells. Each cell has 100 trillion atoms. Right? Very simple fact. It's impossible that anybody can have a thought without Rebbetzin J, positive or negative. I can't put 10 sardines in a can. How can we expect that 100 trillion atoms in each cell is by accident? It's on Rebbetzin J. So if we want to get out of this thought, if I want to help Chaim, we have to help Rebbetzin J. If somebody is sick in the hospital, we want to make a Shavaya. Hashem, Hashem, please help this person. Right? In the same way that we have thoughts which are in Pizer and Nefesh, really the ultimate guide back home is Rebbetzin J. So the first thing is we want to say, Rebbetzin J, please help me. So we're going from a negative thought of, I'm only worried about money. We want to go to a more neutral or positive thought, which is, Rebbetzin J, I can't have a single thought without you. Please help me. And that's where the F in fact comes in, because I'm saying to you, Rebbetzin J, please give me freedom from my Pizer and Nefesh. Please give me freedom from my negative thought. Very simple. I'm acknowledging I can't get out of this without you. And I'm asking you to help me, Rebbetzin J. It's about kosher. So that's the first step. There's a progression on this. Second step is Rebbetzin J says, okay, Chaim, I hear you about kosher, and I want to give you a bracha. I want to give you a bracha. But you know that every bracha we get needs to go into a kli, right? There's no bracha without a kli. So we know the story of the Shanabas, if she's getting oil from the Navi, right, from Elisha, she has to bring the jugs. If somebody brings you flowers, you put them in a vase. So in Chaim, you have to be a kli. So how is Chaim a kli for the bracha? And that's the A in fact. The kli is, A stands for appreciation. Appreciation means, I appreciate all the matanas you give me in life. So I ask Chaim, tell me, what do you appreciate in your life? So he said, my parents, my Rebbe, right? So Chaim, I want you to tell Rebbetzin J, thank you. I appreciate the gifts that you have given me in my life. It shows me that you love me, Rebbetzin J. So now he's going to give him, because he remembers he's just not stuck in the sphere of money, right? He can remember that he can appreciate the gifts that Hashem has given him. So once he does that, he's now out of his He's out of the piece of nefesh a little bit. But there's one more step to go forward. The next step is the next level of thinking. Emotional. I appreciate all the gifts you give me in life, but there's the C now, in fact. And the C, in fact, stands for caring. What does that mean? When I appreciate what you have given me, that's all the things you've given me. I appreciate all the things that you have given me, but I'm on the receiving end. Caring means I'm going to be your Menuchah for Baruch Shalom. I'm going to be your partner. I'm going to care about others. I'm no longer going to worry about the money issue. I'm going to take a role in caring for others. I'm going to care about my grandmother who has COVID. I'm going to care about what happened in Oelbaum. I'm going to care about whatever people I can care about. And maybe I'll even call somebody. Maybe I'll even call somebody and say, I care about you. I'm moving out of my Pizar and Nefesh, and I'm going towards my Menuchah and Nefesh. I'm taking a greater role in being somebody who can care for others. So I've gone from a worry about money, I went to ask for freedom, ask yourself freedom. I've gone now to appreciating the gifts you've given me. I'm now going into caring for others. And once I've done that, then I can reach the C. The C, in fact, which stands for trust. Now I can feel a sense of bitachon. I can feel that I trust her much. I've now returned to the Menuchah and Nefesh. I've now returned to the Menuchah and Nefesh because I experienced bitachon and emunah, trust in you. And this is fact. I want to tell you, Chaim got to his L'chaim. I got a call the next day. He was a different person. All he learned was one way of handling himself, and he went from Pizar and Nefesh to Menuchah and Nefesh. One phone call. And by the way, you can try it with anything. Anytime you have a negative thought about anything, about anybody, use fact. Freedom, appreciation, caring, trust. And you see how everything changes. You have to remember, any time where we are not makir tov to the Baruch Shalom, we're not normal. Every moment of life is a mess. I read that for every breath we take, we need 40 to the power of 25, which is more zeros than from here to Chicago, for all the molecules we need to stay alive that moment. Hashem gives it to us. Every moment of life is a mess. Menuchah and Nefesh is understanding that every moment of life is a gift and it's a mess. And this is one of the ways that I come to teach singles. There are about 8 or 9 different things in this area that we have developed to help singles. Now, and by the way, to teach this, I gave a weekly recording called the Shidduchim Parsha, where I teach these different skills on a weekly basis related to the Parsha, and also on the website, partners Menuchah, they carry these Shidduchims. I want to finish off with something that happened recently and a story I came across. There's a young woman in Eretz Yisrael, her name is Malka. Malka's father was killed by a terrorist many years ago. Ran into the car, She survived. The mother was paralyzed. The father was killed. Malka has since put her life together. She's now 35 years old, but she's unmarried. And she wrote me knew she was in America for a while. And recently she sent me an email. And she said, I'm 35, I'm not married. I don't know if I'll ever have a husband. I don't know if I'll ever have be able to give birth. She said, what do you think about the possibility of doing some kind of procedure which I can have a baby on my own? We begin to understand the pain of someone like Malka, and thousands like her. I told her to go see a Rav who I know in Eretz Israel, and I spoke to her myself, and they'll take her in, and they'll try to help her, try to guide her. But how can you possibly make clear decisions about life when your life is in so much pain? And there are thousands like her who, unless we learn how to help them, are going to leave this world without children, without even getting married. I came across a story with Shabbos. The story was about the Belzer Rebbe, who was in the Bochnia ghetto. They smuggled him in there miraculously, and the Rebbe was living on 2 hours of sleep a day, a little bit of milk, a little bit of coffee. People were coming to one after the next. There was one woman who came, her name was Kaczynski. She had 2 children, one was 3 and one was 6. The 6-year-old had been taken away from her, put on a train to Auschwitz. And somebody threw the child off the train, and the child found his way back home. Miraculously found his way back home. And now, Branya and her 2 children, her husband had been killed by the Nazis, came to the Belzer Rebbe for a bracha, along with many others, countless others. So she came with the 2 boys, and she said, Rebbe, and he said, "There was a help. There was help." Good, okay, move on, but she couldn't move. No, they should go. Other people are waiting. She said, "I can't move." She said, "I cannot move until the Rebbe gives me a bracha that there will be future doros for my children. I'm not leaving until the Rebbe gives me a bracha of future doros." People were laughing. How can you say this? The actions are coming left and right. Your child is alive, isn't it? But he won't get alive tomorrow. He'll never get out of here. No, she'll get out of here. Anyway, she survived, and Branya eventually married she married a Rebbe. She married and there's a picture of her with her and all of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The absurdity of her bakosha became a reality. We don't know how we're getting out of the ghetto that we're seeing now for every neshama who's out there, but we know there's a Rebbeinu Shalom. We know. And he heard her and all the others, and he knows every neshama out there who's looking to get married, who's looking to have a child. Even the small guy in Eretz Israel who wants to have a child, who's ready to do crazy things to have a child. He knows each and every one of them. You are the Rebbes of today. You are the frontline workers. You have to give them, embrace them, and care about them. You have to teach them the skills, right? Not just embrace them, care, but you have to teach them how to be realistic, how to understand, not just be realistic, but how to go from Pisa and Nefesh to Menuchah and Nefesh, so they can understand how to understand their own inner diamonds and to see the inner diamond of the other. So with that, the Avish will guide them to find their true Moshe. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I really like that a lot. As a mental health person, I just love the idea of not only in Shidduchim, but in general, freedom, right? Freedom from our thoughts. Freedom from our thoughts. Amazing idea, right? We're saying that Hashem is responsible for everything. That it's not about us, it's about davening to Hashem. I thought it was excellent. Appreciation, caring, and trust. Freedom from my bad thoughts, appreciation for everything I have, caring for other people, and trusting that Hashem will do the right thing for us. Maybe, and all of you Rebbetzins, that's exactly who you are. You are the people that all of our Kehillas count on for you to have that sense of safety for them, so that they can believe in you and that they can believe that everything will be okay. My Rebbetzin is looking out for me. I don't know if everybody realizes how much of a power you have in terms of the people in your Kehillah, knowing that you are there for them, that if they need to make a phone call about a child that's sick, or a phone call about a shidduch or a shadchan, I can't tell you how many people texted us and emailed us saying, can I please come? I'm not a Rebbetzin, but I know my Rebbetzin is going to be there, and it will give me the opportunity to be among the Rebbetzins. So it's a great honor. It's just a great honor to have all of the Rebbetzins here. Thank you very much, Ms. Astra. Thank you. Okay, so I think for a moment, this is going to be very quick. Just the question is, how do you come to all of these luncheons? How does this happen? How do we pay for the luncheons? How do we get your amazing Rebbetzins here? So I want to introduce a colleague of mine, Dr. Hindi Klein, a very, very famous psychoanalyst. Amazing. And Hindi's going to speak for a minute, and then we're going to move on to the practical applications of what do we do about Shidduchim.
So, hello everybody, and thank you so much for coming. It's been a few years since we've had this wonderful conference, the Rebbetzins Conference, and we are so happy to be back. And first and foremost, Dr. Fegi Zakai. First and foremost. She is the life and the blood of the task force. The task force has been around for about 30-something years. It all started because there was an incident in the Borough Park community where a child died of physical abuse, and everybody in the community was up in arms. So there was a small group of center directors. I was actually not part of OHEL at that time. I was part of another agency. And we were all called together to an OHEL residence. The CEO then was Mr. Lester Kaufman. And we all got together, and it was done in such secrecy that we could not even take the minutes of the meeting with us. We had to leave the minutes of the meetings in the space where we met, because God forbid it should come out that we are having meetings about any sort of abuse in our community, because you know it doesn't happen here. And we proceeded at that time to start trainings, to work with rabbis, to work with teachers in the yeshivas, and to go all over and train people and teach people about physical abuse, sexual abuse, and other forms of trauma, domestic violence, what could be done in the communities. Today, we are an executive committee of Dr. Yitzchak Schindler from Pesach Tikva, Dr. Joel Rosenstein from Betach, Dr. Baruch Bender from HaESTHER. Joel is our lifeblood here. Rabbi Leibish Becker from the Agudath, myself, and Dr. Fegi Zakai from United Task Force. And we are a task force of approximately, we started out with 5 or 6 agencies, 7 agencies. We are now a task force of about 40 agencies. If you look in your folder, you'll see all the agencies. You will also see the contact information if you need to reach an agency for whatever reason. We have name, contact information, numbers, and website information. And we address at this point many, many different issues in the community. We are proud to do this. We've done this for many years, and we are there's many people in the room that are here. There are many people from the agencies, by the way. Yes. So we have Faye Wilbur here from the Jewish Board. Please stand up. Rebbetzin Libby is here from Yelad Vialda. Shady Gerwitz from Akar.
Tyler is here from Rachel's Place.
Yes. From Rachel's Place. Who else is here? Please raise your hands and stand up if you're here as a representative.
Yeah.
Representative Bigler, yes.
Representative Bigler from my extended family.
My extended family.
She works with children that are from divorced homes and broken homes. She runs a school. Every one of these people, they work in agencies that really are helping people. Either Faye Wilbur Jewish Board, mental health for anything, eating disorders, mental health, OCD, you name it. I mean, the list is just. Yellow Bialda, Libby Fain works so hard at Yellow Bialda. They have incredible Makar, Shandy Gerwig. I mean, you have to understand, these are agencies that people really get together once every 6 weeks to talk about the issues that are going on.
These are leaders in the,
amazing.
I represent all the leaders in the community, these women and men who come to these meetings. We have task force meetings every few weeks. They are leaders in the community, and our goal is just to always have a way to help people no matter what. And we celebrate you Rebbetzins because everyone's, as we all have said, you are the first line responders. We have an amazing group of Rebbetzins, from Rebbetzin REISMAN to Rebbetzin Cohen, Rebbetzin Oelbaum. And I
At this moment, I just want to say a special thank you to Rebbetzin Malka Feinstein.
Oh,
Very
an honor to have you here. So that's about it. If there's any questions, you can ask people who are here representing the agencies, or you can come over to us. This is an amazing panel. Thank you so much for coming. It's so great to see you all. It's really great.
I just want to add on, I just go on and on. Rebbetzin Isaac is here, has made so many calls. Rebbetzin Joanne Auman, amazing. I would really like to name every single Rebbetzin here. Rebbetzin L.C.S.W, as I look. Rebbetzin Vlad, every single one, Rebbetzin L.C.S.W. It's such an honor that every single one of you is here. I want to call on every single person here.
You know, this is the first time in a few years that we weren't sure, and look at this fabulous turnout. So thank you so much.
Okay, so we're now, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Cong. We're going to now call up. Just very quickly, you're wondering how this whole Rebetzin's idea got started. I just want to get it going because the main part is coming up. We had like maybe 5 agencies, 7 agencies as part of the task force, and there's an organization called Nefesh that many of you have heard of, all the mental health people. They said, oh, could you come and tell us how you have this task force of 5, 7, 10 agencies? And as we were talking and telling them about it, Rebbetzin Weinberger from Allah Shalom, thank you, Dr. Rosenstein. From Ner Yisrael, I don't know how many of you knew her. She's probably about 4'11", but with a loud, booming voice. And she got up and she said, Faggy, you're making a big mistake. You don't need to talk to the rabbis. All you need to do is talk to the Rebbetzins. Because the Rebbetzins are the ones that really, they know how to get the message across. And it is because of Rebbetzin Weinberger that we are all here talking to the Rebbetzins. And on that note, let me introduce a Rebbetzin that is the Rebbetzin of Rebbetzin, young, beautiful, but still so much power. Her husband is the rabbi in Young Israel of the White Shul in Woodmere.
The White Shul in Far Rockaway.
White Shul in Far Rockaway. This beautiful Rebbetzin FEINER. It is our greatest honor that this year Rebbetzin FEINER joined Rebbetzin REISMAN to be the co-host of this Rebbetzin conference. And it is an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
So a little bit about myself and my connections to all these wonderful people. Even before I was Rebbetzin of the White Shul, I've been working in Camp Simcha for the last 20 years. And this one is very precious to my heart. And so is that one. And I was asked to introduce EFRAT SOBOLOFSKY, who is a Rebbetzin in her own right. And just to bring it all together, my original connection with her is that my parents gave Shem Brachot for herself many, many years ago, and I remember it very well. And I just want to share a personal story that happened to me that really gives a lot of insight to some of what EFRAT is going to say. I am the Rebbetzin of a shul of 650 families. I work currently at Tag High School. I've gone to Camp Simcha for 20 years, and I ran a seminary for 9 years. I'm on a lot of resumes. I get between 2 or 5 or 6 shidduch calls a day, people looking into shidduchim. In fact, I was calling 2 back this morning as I was driving here. And when people call me, I actually tell them, I prep them, and I say, this has nothing to do with who you're calling about. Have your questions ready. I don't want to waste time going round and round. It's just too much for me. But I'm always happy to give information and to try to help. And I also, as a Rebbetzin, and I think you all know, we all want to try to help our children from our shul, the ones we love and care about so much, find Shidduchim, and I'm constantly trying, and I was successful once. So just got to keep going. But let's take it up here. I'll tell you a story that happened to me when I was living in Eretz Yisrael before my Rebbetzin days, and really touches the Hashem factor that we also very much believe in. I taught in a certain seminary. I'm not even going to name the name of the seminary. I taught in a few seminaries, and I had a girl crying to me. This is a girl who was in our second-year program. Her family situation was quite difficult. Her mother had gone off the derech. She was raised by a remarried father. She wasn't particularly bright or attractive, and she's crying to me, who is going to marry me? Nobody's going to marry me. And I said to her, sweetheart, let's look at last year's girls. The first one married was actually a very heavy-set girl who was a Yasoma. I said, all Hashem needs to do is send one. This young lady, and now beautiful mother of a big family, was the first girl married from her group of friends. The next year, I'm standing with another girl. This was the situation is not worse. Her parents were Balei Tshuva. Her father had a nervous breakdown and ended up being hospitalized. And her mother decided at that point in time that she did not want to be from anymore, and took the whole entire family and put all her siblings in public school. Since she was the oldest girl, she still was holding on. And she's crying to me in the same spot as the girl from last year, and she's saying, who's going to marry me? Nobody's going to marry me. Who's going to marry me? And I said, you know, Hashem's in charge. And it only takes one. She was the first one from her class, too. It only takes one. But I can tell you, it's a trying parsha. It's a horrible parsha. It's a parsha. When Naomi is walking to Eretz Yisrael, that famous walk that we're about to read about on Shavuos that is upcoming, she turns to her daughters-in-law, she says to them, go back home, umatzena menucha. You'll find menucha. I want you to go back home, and part of what she's discussing with them throughout is that she has no children in her, she's not going to have any more children. Who will they marry if they become converts and they come to Eretz Yisrael? Go back home, umatzena menucha, you'll find menucha. And the Targum Yonasan, who is the Targum on Rus, says over there that she's saying, go home and get married, find a shidduch. Where do we find that? We find that a shidduch is menucha from the pasuk about Tevas Moach, that it says, V'tanach ha-teva, and Targum Okelus says, V'shadicha Aaron, V'shadicha, that the Teva rested, that it found a shidduch. That the concept of menucha is a shidduch, that a shidduch is menucha, and that all we can do is try to come up within ourselves and our lives and our families and our shuls with ideas on how to try to help HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because He's really doing it and He doesn't need our help. But to show Him that we're trying, and somehow we hope that if we show Him that we're trying, He'll do it for us. And EFRAT SOBOLOFSKY is a Rebbetzin who did just that. And she has been proudly running a very, very successful shidduch organization called YuConnects, and I think she has a lot to tell us about how things have worked for her. They have made, she'll tell us how many shidduchim, and here she is, Madison.
I just want to say this is a very, very great honor for us to have her at WSD. She's a very busy person. She runs an organization called YuConnects, and has done thousands of shidduchim, and she is going to do, you're going to love this. We started out hearing about Ricky Schwartz and what it means to be single and how difficult it is to go through the shidduch crisis. And then we heard Rebbetzin FEINER, and we heard SHAYA give us incredible ideas about Menuchah. And now we are going to hear practical applications of what a Rebbetzin, the power of a Rebbetzin, of what a Rebbetzin can do to help with Shidduchim. It is my greatest honor that EFRAT SOBOLOFSKY is here.
To say that I'm humbled to be here is a complete understatement. I know many of the names in the room, but I don't have the chance to know everybody. I do want to say hello to Dr. Rebbetzin J. I don't know if he remembers, but my first year of internship in social work school in Wurzweiler, I did it at Mishkan under Rabbi Rebbetzin J and SOBOLOFSKY back in the day. And my second year I did in Israel, and then I moved back to New York. I thank you for having me. Thank you, Rebbetzin J, Rebbetzin FEINER, Dr. Klein, and all of the organizers. I'm sure I'm missing some of them, but you couldn't say no after they called so many times, and we'll pay for your car, and we'll pay for it back, and we'll do anything. So I hope that I share inspiring ways that we could all be helpful. I'm just first going to give you a little bit of background of where I come from, so you'll see hopefully how we can all relate in different parts of my life. I grew up in California. I went to ESTHER in California. Then I went to college. I went to seminar, and now it's popular again. I went to seminar, and then I went to school in California just for my undergrad. And
If he takes off the mic, will you hold it?
well,
Yeah, because we'll hear you better.
I hear myself.
I know, but we need to hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. And then I went to Wurzweiler for my master's degree. And I, Baruch Hashem, was zocheh to marry my husband, SOBOLOFSKY. He is a Rosh Yeshiva at YU. In the days that I met him, he was just a Nicole Elyon, and then following that, he became a Rav of a Shul. We lived in Paramus for a few years. And then we moved to Bergenfield, Teaneck, which is Teaneck. So anytime you're in Teaneck, you are welcome to stop by. We have wonderful restaurants there. That's what we're known for. I don't go, but I know. Anyways, yeah, who has time, right? So anyway, then my children went to Breuer's. My sons went to the Orach Chaim system. I have one boy dating now in Lakewood, so I know from the boys' side. One daughter lives in Passaic, and she's married to a boy from Philly who is learning in Kollel. He's from Flatbush. Pidyon Aben was actually here, so it makes me feel good. And then I have a younger boy and a younger girl, boy in Beis Medrash and a girl in Passaic in one of the Beis Yaakovs. So I feel like I walk in different worlds. I walk in the YU world, and I also walk in the Lakewood world just because of our kids, and I feel like we could relate to different parts. I am going to speak just from the YuConnects lens. I feel that a lot of it you'll be able to relate to, but more importantly, you could take home and apply the parts that work best for your shul and your community and your clientele. So first of all, thank you, Rivki, for speaking so beautifully. What Rivki spoke about is why people who do Shidduchim don't sleep very much. Most people who do this don't sleep very much because you go to sleep very often with heavy hearts of, I'm married and they're not. I have children and they don't. So after you set up a bunch of people and you hear some pain here and there throughout the day, whoever you're setting up, or parents, rabbanim, grandparents calling, whoever's calling, you go with like a, but at the same time, we do have to acknowledge, I hope Rivki would agree, that we live in a time where I would say over the last 20 years, I don't know, probably Astra would agree, there's so much being done. There's so much more awareness, like Figgy said. It's on everybody's radar, maybe a little bit too much. There's not a Mishpacha magazine, there's not an Ami magazine, there's not a Yatet. There's nowhere that you go that people don't put this issue front and forward, again, for the right reasons. But I'm here to say that there's so much we could do, and that with every single shidduch we make, there's literally generations that come forward. I'm never gonna solve the shidduch crisis. I'm not gonna help most of the people that come to YuConnects, but I could say that with every marriage, there's descendants. Like on this yesterday, somebody who rang me their shidduch a few years ago sent me a picture of the bris of number, they're 5, their 5th child. So my husband turns to me, he's like, you see, that's 5 people just because of him. So don't minimize one shidduch. And if everyone leaves this room even today, making one shidduch with whoever's sitting next to them, we're already way ahead of the game. And we are seriously rebuilding the future. Thanks to people like Lisa Elephant, right? She's not here.
She's actually busy interviewing yeshiva boys.
Yes, I know. So I'm just giving a shout out to Lisa Elephant. She started Adopt a Shadchan a few years ago. She has Shadchanim. Canvassing the area is an understatement to say there's not a place that you don't find an Adopt a Shadchan. My Shadchanim are called YuConnects connectors because we don't want them to think that we're too frummy, so we don't like to use the word Shadchanim. But they're all connected. We have chats, multiple WhatsApp chats that all these Shadchanim, all they do, there's a constant sharing of information, and a good thing, every week you see more and more engagement. So people are networking, people are on it, people are thinking what they could do and really getting on it. So I would say as Rebbetzins, sorry, can I just go out of order for one thing? I forgot to say how YuConnects started. 15 years ago, before my youngest was born, a bunch of the Kollel couples living on the YU campus had the same feeling, like because our husbands were in the base medrash, we were getting constant calls. Which boys do you know? Which girls do you know? So a few of the young couples went to the president of YU at the time and said, could we start a matchmaking service? So at first they were like, this is a university, I don't know, like it really needs to be done. And we pushed, and we said some of these people some of the students are gonna then become more modern, maybe intermarry. Like we really need to do something, to do whatever. So Baruch Hashem, they did give us the original money. Now it's my job to raise money. But at the time they were into it, and the condition was that we could do it as part of the university if we incorporate education. It's not just that you're going to make shidduchim, it's you're going to teach shadchanim how to be good shadchanim, and you're going to help the singles learn what's good about relationship skills, and you're going to work with the rabbeim. So we did all that. So a lot of what I'm going to give you, some of the resources that you can give you to take home are a lot of education that we put hand in hand and not just making a shidduch. We have connector trainings, we do, we invite Lisa Elephant's people, Lisa invites us to us. We're very connected. Okay, fine. So as Rebbetzins, I would say the first thing, and this could be an obvious to all of you, but if it's not, at least I inspired someone, is to really, I'll say it in a professional way, but I'll first say it in a more firmy way. To really do a din v'cheshbon of your shul and your resources inside your shul. Like, take a day, if you haven't done it already, maybe many of you have already. Who are the singles in my shul? What are their age groups? Don't forget about the older ones. We're very stuck on the 20-year-olds like my son. As Rivki told you, there's a lot of older ones. People who are never married, people who want to remarry, people who lost their husbands or they're divorced or the opposite. We can't just focus on the 19-year-olds and say nothing else matters. It's a real part of it. So I would say first to make a list in your own mind of look at the families, the members in your shul, who if I would start helping shidduchim, who am I helping? The next thing I would do is, what are the internal resources in your shul or in your community? I mean, again, I don't know I don't know here where everybody's from, but in Teaneck, I know who the shadchanim are. In YU, I know who the shadchanim are. I don't know in Brooklyn, I know there's lots, or Queens, there's lots, but who are the shadchanim that if you were going to call upon them to help the members of your shul, who are they? What is their foci? This one focuses on the 19-year-olds. This one focuses on the older ones. This one focuses on people who have some challenges. That could be a lot of different things. You just first make like a list of if a single person in your shul came to you, and this probably is common to all of you, and said, I'm new to shidduchim, what should I do? Where should I start? think in your mind, would you have that tutorial ready? Would you know what to say? What would you say? Would you say, oh, do you have a resume? I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying what you want to say. Did you build a resume? How do you know you're ready to date? Do you know who the Shadchanim are in town? Whatever it is. Yeah, I'm not saying Rebbetzin Feinstein. I didn't create the resume. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But because everyone has it, I'm just saying if she perked up and said, why do we have resumes? She's right. You're totally right. But I'm saying you have to figure out what is and just find out what the people would need to know. Okay? Is the mother calling? Is the mother calling the shadchan, or is the girl or the young man meeting the shadchan? Just find out in your own minds what happens. Do you have a list in your mind of who the dating coaches are? Some people are good with shidduchim. Some people are not such great shidduchim. They don't make the shidduchim so much, but they do dating coaching. Just give you an example. Last week I was at a wedding in the marina. It was packed. I made a shidduch. I shouldn't say made a shidduch. I'm in the middle of a shidduch. And at the end, and sometimes I get too busy. I don't make a lot of shidduchim, unfortunately, because I'm busy with the administrative parts and the fundraising parts of this program. But I happened to be in the middle of a shidduch. As I'm walking out of the chuppah, there was over like 700 people there, a dating coach turned me to the side and she's like, I know you're in the middle of shidduch, but you forgot to, she gave me a list, you forgot to tell the boy, like, you're right. Even shadchanim miss things sometimes. I walked right out of the marina, called the boy, and now they're on date number 10 because she was right. She's been talking to the girl. I had no idea. She introduced herself and she gave me the list of like certain things that should have been obvious, but I was so busy with the shidduch that I forgot to remind the boy to say, I like you, whatever it was. That was just an example, or when am I meeting my parents, those kinds of examples. So if you know if there are coaches in your neighborhood and you want to have a list of them, find out who they are. But some are better than others, and some are, there's no real license for coaching, like, a PhD in social work or something like that. There's not real a license for coaching. So in fairness, anybody could be a coach or call themselves a coach, but there are different ways that people have trainings in it. Like there's Oelbaum and Elizabeth Shalom. There's a lot of people who give coaching seminars, and the people become much better at it. I know that I send some of my shadchanim for coaching certifications, and they're much better shadchanim. Do you know who the therapists are in your town, in case there is a real issue? And thank God for the task force, you're dealing with real issues. Sometimes there's real issues, not just it'll be okay. No, this is an issue that needs to be explored, resolved, addressed, whatever the word is. Okay, I have a lot of people I set up that are on different medications, and they have different mental health challenges. It's not a reason why they shouldn't all get married, but these are things that you need to know who is talking to them. So I'm sometimes involved with a team with the rabbi, the doctor, and the shadchan, and who is saying what when. So just in your own soul, who are they? The other thing is, as Rebbetzins and AVIVA mentioned it correctly, do you know the people in your shul? I don't know everybody in my shul, even though my shul is small. We have 100 families in our shul. We don't have such a large shul. But do you know the people who are dating in your shul, so that when you get phone calls, can you answer the questions? I would say two things to what AVIVA said. Number one, if you can't answer the questions, about whatever they're going to ask you, try to get to know the person before you get that call. So like this Shabbos, for example, I saw a girl in my shul that she davens here. She doesn't talk so much. I don't talk so much to her, right or wrong. She doesn't talk so much to me. But somebody called me last week about her. I didn't know anything to say. I went to my little daughter. I said to my daughter, what is she doing? Ima, she's in Turo. For what? She was feeding me the information. My daughter, rightfully so, said, Ima, you better talk to her in shul. This is not a good situation that you don't know how to answer the questions. 100% right. So I took 5 minutes after shul. She told me what she's going for. She told me what type of boy she's looking for. Next time someone calls, I'll sound more educated. Another thing I would say is we're all so busy, and a lot of pizor hanefesh, in my opinion, has to do with my phone, and we're juggling so much between our kids, our parents, people in the shul, whatever you have, your work. sometimes we answer these calls on the fly too quickly, and we give the wrong impression. So, I mean, I have a son now in Shidduchim, so sometimes when you call a person, are they nice? Yeah. What's the family like? They're nice. What about the girl? She's nice. That's not gonna make me call the next person. It never does. So you wanna be in a perky mood, and you wanna find the adjectives, even about the person that you're not so sure you have the most important, most impressive things to say about, but find them. Find the right adjectives to say nice about the family. I'm not saying chas v'chalila, don't be honest, but your tone is important. And the other thing is the time. If somebody calls, like even now, as Aviva said, when I was on the way here, somebody said to me, can I ask you about the sport? So I said, I'm telling you I have 30 seconds now, but I could give you more time if you call me after 3. Say that. Don't feel bad that, you're gonna rush on a phone call if you're not gonna give them the right time. I would also say to make sure you return phone calls, like, how you just said about speak to the Rebbetzins, not the rabbis. Because I'm a little too passionate about Shidduchim, if my poor husband doesn't return a call about a reference, I drive him crazy. I'm like, do you understand you could be holding up the date? I thought I don't have time. No, we're stopping. And you're gonna call. Because this woman is texting me that she tried you 3 times and you're so busy. And I know he's busy. I'm not underestimating. My husband's not playing bingo or anything like that. But sometimes he doesn't have the time. But just keep in mind that often you're holding up dates. And these dates are important. And with every date, it's important. I know, as an example, I called Rabbi REISMAN about someone, and I liked his message was, call me from 3:30 to 4:30. Maybe I'm saying the times wrong, on this phone number.
Only at 4:30.
Was it?
Only at 4:30
Only at-
you return his call, Rabbi REISMAN.
See, there you go. But people know when he's available, especially as opposed to just being on the fly. Yeah, people call you. Okay, whatever. So just to be available. Okay. Do not focus on the younger ones only. That's what we spoke about. The other thing is, invite them for Shabbos meals. Like if it's easier for you to get to know people on Shabbos meal, like Rivki suggested, also older singles, younger singles, have them over where you have more time, you're more relaxed, even though you're serving, but you could ask them casual questions instead of a very formal interview. And as Rivki said correctly, just to show people you care. You have to really show people that you care without judgment. I think that Rivki didn't speak about it enough, not because she didn't want to, but I could say it. We're very quick to be judgy. Me included. She's single because of this. He's single because of that. As I get older, and I don't like to be judged about some of the things in my life that are not related to being single, but about other challenges that I have in my life, I've become like, we can't judge anybody anymore. I don't know why this, I don't know why that, I don't know a lot of things. A very smart friend of mine, she's also Rebbetzin, Dr. Tova Konigsberg, she always says to me, the older I get, the dumber I get. Sometimes I feel the same way. The older I get, the less I know. I don't know why this, I don't know why that. I don't know a lot of things, but it's a very important skill, like to try so hard, not to be judgy and to be. They have their nisyonos, I have my nisayon. I'm sure they're aware of whatever their nisyonos are, and we're here to help. And if they come for you for eitzah, that's another thing. If they come for you for eitzah, try, I think, not to. This is what I might have been 20 years ago. You should do this. You should do that. Try to get it from them. What do you want to do? What do you think is the right thing? Sometimes when you're meeting with singles. And let's say you meet them every few years and they don't feel they're progressing. A smart way of saying it is, do you want us to reevaluate like what we're looking for? Do you think like maybe something, have you changed, or do you think it's worth changing something that you might be looking for, as opposed to you're being too picky? You have to reframe it. I did it with my own son. Like he came out of the freezer a few months ago. We were stuck on a few seminaries, and I'm like, Meir Yaakov, we gotta expand here. Not everyone got into BJJ. Not everyone got into which Masoros Russell or whichever seminary. Like It's true, you gotta look at the person, see where they're at. We're a little bit too fixated, and I'm saying me included, so sometimes we have to broaden ourselves, but instead of saying, you're being too picky, or this is not working, it's a good thing to have a relationship with someone that whatever you decide, every few months, every few years, to like bring them into conversation and say, is there some, tell me what's working, tell me what's not working, and let the answer and the direction come from the person, as opposed to self-determination. That's what it's called in social work school. Let the answer come from the person, as opposed to, you should go out with her, you shouldn't go out with her. It's sometimes disappointing when I hear from young boys. I hope it's not recorded in a bad way, but even sometimes I'm like, go out with her, don't go out with her. Who are we to know? We go to weddings and you're all sitting there and we're thinking, we never, ever would have put those two together. Even my own wedding, I still remember the two people that said, really? Yeah, really, it worked. But you shouldn't have said really, because you made me feel bad, but it worked, we're married, Baruch Hashem, but it's always that, and I used to say that when I was young, I stopped that, because who knows, you never know. Okay, another thing that I find is important with singles and their parents, and I'm not a melumedet. I'm not a melumedet like Rebbetzin REISMAN or like Fady Zakheim that are learning at 7:30 in the morning, or all the people who are learning. I unfortunately don't learn as much as I should. I somehow gave that away to my husband. Hishtadlus, bitachon, emuna. People have different opinions as to what's too much on every spectrum. I can't give you the answer. Like I one time was watching a video from Rabbi Biederman, and he said, just make a shadchan, one call a week, that's enough. Then recently, even for myself, because I was overwhelmed with the resumes that I have for my own son, and some of them are like all over the place, so I don't even know what to do with them. But I called someone in Eretz Yisrael, a Rebbetzin that I look up to, and I said to her, I have a lot of responsibilities. I'm going to go through them with you. I have a job, and it's all Shidduchim. I have a shul. I should be paying attention to the people on my shul. I have kids, and I have 2 kids at home that want supper. And I have married kids who call, could you watch the kids? And I have 3 aging parents. But I have to focus on this son. So I said to her, how much hishtadlus should I do every day on the child that I have right now in Shidduchim? I'm only giving me as an example because this applies to any of you, but anybody in your shul. Because sometimes we're like lost, like, oh, my husband will come home, did you make any calls? I just couldn't. You do that, like that type of thing. So I realized that because we're very pizer nefesh these days, we're all over the place, running. Sometimes you have to say, you know what? So this is what she helped me with. She said to me, everyone could fill in their own blanks. Half hour a day, you're going to focus, half hour a day or half hour every other day, you're going to focus on the son's shidduchim. 15 minutes every day, I want you don't have to do this, you just gave me a formula. 15 minutes every day, I want you to call someone in the shul that could use chizuk, not about shidduchim. How are you? What's going on? Whatever. Definitely, she told me I need to make supper for my little one. That feels that I don't. And she was trying, and then she told me a very beautiful thing. She said, don't just call shadchanim, rotate it. This Rebbetzin has a daughter herself in Shidduchim, and she said one day she calls a shadchan, the next day she calls a friend, because she feels, and she's right, that very, 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 very often Shidduchim come from friends, that then Baruch Hashem bring it to shadchanim. My own daughter got engaged to someone from Flatbush. Ellen Lieber set her up with the first boy, the boy and Tova were in a match after the first date. This boy ran into his high school friend on the street, which was so nice, and said, I met your wife. Ellen Lieber's gonna call you. And that's exactly what happened. This boy made my daughter shidduch. Ellen Lieber was a fantastic shadchan in Flatbush, but it was because she set him up with the first that we brought to the next, which is just a little sideshow.